Hey everyone, welcome in. Today, we're diving into a very heavy situation, the horrific gang massacre in Pont-Sunday, Haiti. We'll unpack the events, of course, but more importantly, we really want to understand the human cost, the ripple effects,
Hmm.
and what this tragedy reveals about the larger crisis gripping the nation. It's just trying to imagine yourself in this scenario. It's chilling.
Yeah.
Picture this. It's the middle of the night in Pont Sunday. Families are asleep in their homes, kids tucked into bed. Then suddenly, the night just explodes with gunfire. You're ripped from sleep, plunged into darkness, scrambling to protect your loved ones. Nowhere to run, no idea who to trust. That was the terrifying reality. For the people of Pont Sunday, one survivor, Cenis Morano, she recounted her desperate escape, fleeing with her children in the darkness as gunshots echoed all around them. And can you imagine that terror? Just pure instinct to survive. Her and hundreds of others eventually found refuge in a park in nearby St. Mark.
Wow.
What a harrowing journey to make with so much uncertainty.
What makes this event even more disturbing is that it's not an isolated incident. Gang violence has been plaguing Haiti, particularly the Artibonite region, for years now. It's a deeply rooted problem with a complex web of contributing factors. We're talking poverty, political instability, lack of opportunities, and disturbingly easy access to weapons. All these factors combined create a breeding ground for these armed groups to flourish. And it's led to absolutely devastating consequences.
It sounds like what you're saying is these gangs are almost filling a void where the government and opportunities are absent. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, that's a great point. You see, when a government struggles to provide basic necessities and security, armed groups, they can exploit that vacuum. They insert themselves into communities, often offering this, I hate to call it this, but a perverse form of protection or opportunity that the government can't or won't. And in Haiti, years of political instability have just weakened institutions, making it even harder for them to combat these powerful gangs.
Right. So this attack in Ponsonde, just how bad are we talking? I know you mentioned it's one of the worst, but do we have a sense of the scale?
Sadly, yes. At least 70 confirmed dead, and that number is expected to climb as more information comes to light. The Pont-Sunday massacre is among the worst Haiti has witnessed in recent years, sadly.
Mm.
It's a grim testament to the grip these gangs have on the country. It's not just about territorial control anymore. It's a full-blown humanitarian crisis.
Yeah, and reading through these accounts, it's impossible to ignore the human cost. The stories are just heartbreaking. Men, women, children caught in the crossfire. One detail that really struck me was the report of a young mother, her newborn baby, and even the midwife who helped deliver the child, all killed.
Oh my goodness.
It just underscores how indiscriminate this violence is, how no one is safe.
Absolutely, and that senseless loss of life is only one dimension of this tragedy. This event has poured gasoline on an already raging fire, Haiti's displacement crisis. Imagine being forced to abandon your home, your entire life uprooted by unimaginable violence. The International Organization for Migration estimates that over 700,000 Haitians are now internally displaced, a staggering 22% increase since June alone.
It's hard to even fathom that number of people, 700,000. And with resources already stretched so thin, what happens to those fleeing for their lives? Where do they even go?
That's the most difficult question. Imagine being one of the thousands fleeing for your life, with only the clothes on your back, your home a distant memory. Where do you turn? Many end up relying on the generosity of host families.
It's just overwhelming to think about. The sheer scale of displacement, the lack of resources, the trauma these families are enduring, it makes you wonder what happens next? What kind of support exists for these displaced families? Especially those relying on host families, who are likely already struggling themselves.
All right, you've hit on a truly heartbreaking aspect of this crisis. The International Organization for Migration's report paints a bleak picture. It estimates that roughly 90% of those displaced from the Pont-Sunday attack are now relying on the generosity of host families, families who are often struggling to make ends meet themselves. Imagine the strain on both sides. The families forced to flee with nothing, and the families taking them in, sharing what little they have.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking ripple effect. And on top of that, you have the trauma these families have experienced. Fleeing for your life, witnessing unspeakable violence. It's hard to even fathom the long-term impact on mental and emotional well-being. It seems like any kind of effective response would have to address both the immediate needs and those long-term effects. Right.
Absolutely. It's a multifaceted crisis that demands a multi-pronged response. We're talking about immediate humanitarian aid, food, water, shelter, medical care, but also long-term support for trauma, economic empowerment, and rebuilding shattered lives and communities.
So, on the immediate response front, what actions has the Haitian government taken since the massacre? Have there been any concrete steps towards justice or security for the people of Pont Sunday?
Well, in the immediate aftermath, the Haitian government did deploy an elite police unit to Pont-Sande. Prime Minister Connell even visited the town, promising justice for the victims and vowing to bring the perpetrators to justice. He also appealed for the community's cooperation in identifying those responsible.
Okay, so on the surface, it sounds like they're taking it seriously. But I have to admit, I'm feeling a bit skeptical. You mentioned earlier that these gangs often operate with more power than the authorities. So how effective can these measures really be?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? On paper, sending in elite police units might sound reassuring. But you have to consider the deeply rooted nature of this problem. These gangs aren't just street thugs. They control vast territories. They have access to resources and weaponry. And they operate with a level of impunity that's deeply troubling.
So it's almost like deploying more police is just a band-aid on a much deeper wound. It doesn't address the systemic issues that allowed these gangs to flourish in the first place.
Precisely. And that's the real challenge facing Haiti. Addressing the root causes of this crisis, it's not just about law enforcement. It's about tackling poverty, inequality, lack of opportunity, and the systemic corruption that has plagued the country for far too long.
And that brings up another question. What about the role of the international community? We've seen this kind of cycle of violence and instability in Haiti before. What, if anything, can outside actors do to support meaningful change this time?
That's a crucial question. And I think it's important to acknowledge that there have been past interventions by the international community, some well-intentioned, some perhaps less so. But too often, these interventions have fallen short of addressing the root causes, sometimes even exacerbating existing problems.
So if past interventions haven't yielded the desired results, what needs to be different this time? What would a truly effective international response look like?
That's what everyone is grappling with. There's no easy answer. But one thing is clear. It needs to be a collaborative effort. We're talking about working hand in hand with the Haitian people, not dictating solutions from afar. It requires listening to local communities, understanding their specific needs, and empowering them to be agents of change.
It sounds like you're talking about a fundamental shift in approach, moving away from top-down solutions and towards genuine partnership and local empowerment.
Exactly. And that involves supporting Haitian-led initiatives, investing in sustainable development, strengthening institutions, and promoting good governance. It's a long-term commitment, not a quick fix.
So while the Haitian government grapples with the immediate aftermath of this tragedy, the international community has a responsibility to step up and offer meaningful support that goes beyond just words of condemnation.
Absolutely. We've seen the statements from the UN, the EU, expressing their outrage and calling for an end to the violence. But as you said, words without action ring hollow. It's time to translate those words into tangible, sustained support that truly empowers the Haitian people to build a more stable and peaceful future.
So awareness is crucial, but it's only the first step. The real test is whether those in positions of power are willing to put in the work, the resources, and the long-term commitment needed to create lasting change.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's time to move beyond reactive measures and embrace a proactive, collaborative approach that tackles the root causes of this crisis.
It's easy to get caught up in all of, the geopolitical complexities, the statistics, the search for solutions on a grand scale. But at the heart of this tragedy are real people, families whose lives have been shattered. We can't forget that human cost.
Absolutely. Behind every headline, every statistic, there's a human story. These families have lost loved ones, their homes, their sense of security. The trauma they've endured is unimaginable, and the road to recovery will be long and arduous.
It makes you wonder, what does that road to recovery even look like? For someone who's experienced this level of violence and displacement, it's hard to imagine ever feeling safe again.
It's unfathomable, really, and the needs are so multifaceted. We're talking about providing basic necessities, of course, like food, water, shelter, and medical care. But it goes far beyond that. These individuals, these families, will need extensive psychological and emotional support to even begin to process the trauma they've endured.
And for the children who've witnessed such horror, the invisible scars, they might last a lifetime.
Sadly, that's often the case. Trauma at that age can have profound and lasting effects. It really underscores the need for child-specific interventions, things like psychosocial support, educational opportunities, safe spaces, where they can heal and rebuild their lives.
It feels overwhelming, almost paralyzing to confront a crisis of this magnitude. As we wrap up our deep dive, it's easy to feel a sense of helplessness. So what can our listeners, everyday people who are heartbroken by this tragedy, what can they actually do to make a difference?
It's a question that weighs heavily on all of us, especially when faced with such immense suffering. But I believe the first step is the one we've taken today, choosing to engage, to educate ourselves, to move beyond the headlines and grapple with the complexities of this crisis. Knowledge is power, and understanding is the foundation for meaningful action.
So it starts with awareness, with actively seeking out information from reliable sources, diversifying our news consumption to get a broader perspective on the situation.
Precisely. And once we've taken that step, we can start channeling our concern into action. We can support organizations working on the ground in Haiti, providing aid, delivering essential services, and advocating for systemic change. Even a small contribution can make a difference in someone's life.
It's about putting our empathy into action, donating to reputable NGOs, amplifying the voices of Haitian activists and organizations on social media, contacting our elected officials to advocate for increased humanitarian aid and more effective policies.
Absolutely. Every voice, every action contributes to a collective movement for change. And while it might feel like a drop in the ocean, remember that an ocean is made up of billions of individual drops.
And perhaps most importantly, we can resist the urge to turn away from difficult news, to become desensitized to suffering. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to disconnect. But it's in those moments that our empathy, our sustained engagement, matters
You've
most.
hit the nail on the head. It's about recognizing that this isn't just a Haitian problem. It's a human problem. It's a reflection of the world we live in. And the question we must ask ourselves is, what kind of world do we want to create? One where such suffering is tolerated, or one where we actively strive for a more just, equitable, and peaceful future for all?
What a powerful question to leave us with. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredibly important deep dive. We encourage you to stay informed, stay engaged, and never underestimate the power of your voice, your actions, and your empathy in shaping a better future for Haiti and the world.